Because when we are scared, when we are afraid, when we feel diminished, we have stopped listening. Hi everybody, welcome back to Project Happy Home. For those of you who are new here, I'm Tanya, a doctor, lawyer turned homeschool mom of 3 kids ages 9, 6, and 4. My eldest has ADHD, and I've been making videos about ADHD and just little tips for parents since a couple of years ago. This is the second in my series of videos on ADHD Parenting 101, and I've created this series because I want to approach the needs of parents with children who have ADHD in a more systematic fashion. Over the last couple of years, I have done several videos on parenting ADHD, so you might want to check them out in the ADHD playlist, which I'll link down in the description box below. And they are titled under ADHD tips as well as parenting emotionally complex children or raising emotionally complex children. The reason for that broad umbrella term is because a lot of times we don't know what our child might have, but we know that they are atypically wired, as well as for the fact that no matter where your child is or what group of letters follow his name or what diagnosis follows him, for parents of atypically wired children, we often encounter the same difficulties, the same challenges. So there is that broad umbrella there. However, in this video series, I want to address my experience and help those who have children with ADHD. Now, some of these tips will help a lot of parents with atypically wired children, but I want to narrow the focus to the experience we've had in our household and the things that I have found that work out the best. Now this video, the second video in the series, was supposed to be about diagnostic testing and how you could go about establishing a definitive diagnosis for your child. However, I have decided to talk to you instead about what I think is the most important thing going forward, regardless of whether you get a diagnosis for your child or not. I think the most important thing going forward is for you to understand that your relationship with your child, your connection to your child, will determine so much of his or her progress, of his or her heart, of his or her experience throughout their childhood and their adulthood. I think that oftentimes we can fall into the trap of either getting a diagnosis for our child and following to the letter something that a book or a video or a medical professional tells us, and sort of leaving it up to the kid to see how can we change this child, how can we make this child more neurotypical, how can we get them up to speed. And that would be a mistake, because while your child might be atypically wired, while your child may actually have a label that they fall into, they are also incredibly unique. When you have met one child with ADHD, you have met one child with ADHD. Each child is unique in and of themselves, just the same way that each adult is unique. They have a personality that the ADHD is overlaying on top of. Some children will inherently be more sensitive. Some children will be inherently more bookish. Others will be more loud with their voice. Others will be more loud and physical with their bodies. That comes in and of itself before we overlay any type of diagnosis on top of them. That even though ADHD is a neurobiological difference, that there are actual differences in brain maturation and neurotransmitter communication in the brains of those who have ADHD. This is all happening in the body and mind of your own unique, special child. So when you listen to any of these videos, or when you read the books and the articles and take the advice from medical care professionals, make sure you do so with your individual, wonderful child in mind. Because certain things that work for me will not work for you. And certain things that work for my son will not work for your child. And that's a good thing. And when you do some of these techniques and you don't find them working, do not despair, because it may just not fit with the personality of your child or the type of ADHD that they have, the type of neurowiring that they have. This is all generalities. When we look at the science of ADHD, a lot of times we're looking at generalities. Science looks at the averages. They look at the commonalities they can find over a broad host of children, of a broad host of patients. So take it all with a grain of salt. Keep your child in mind, at the forefront of your mind. Who are they? What do they enjoy? How do they express themselves? What brings them comfort? How do you connect to them? And when you go through these several tips and tricks and tools that we may talk about in this series, always come back to your connection with your child, because that is the bedrock and the foundation on which all of this scaffolding will be built. I often use that word scaffolding when I talk about raising a child with ADHD, because I truly believe that our job is not to make life easier for them, to lower our expectations, to act like they are somehow disabled or dysregulated, but rather to help them thrive in what society expects of them at any given age. Because whether or not their brain maturation is lagging a little bit behind, whether or not our children act a few years younger than their age, they live in this world with the rest of us. They live in a house with other children. They live in a house with busy parents often. They go to school or clubs or classes where they will be judged based on their chronological age and size. And our job is to scaffold them so that they can better meet the expectations of real life. And I truly believe that. This scaffolding, just the same way as scaffolding on a building is built, depends a lot on the foundation of that building. If your foundation is weak, if your connection with your child is broken, it doesn't matter what type of scaffolding you build. It does not matter what types of visual cues and charts and tricks and timetables and timers and fidgets you use, because it is all built on shifting sands, on a weak foundation. Whenever you make a decision with your child, try to come back to the question, how can I comfort him or her now? How can I make them feel safe now? Because for any child, whether neurotypical or not, it is important that they feel safe in their home, that they feel safe with their parent, that your parent-child relationship is one of trust, that they know that no matter what mistake or horrible thing they just said or horrible thing they just did or embarrassing thing that might have happened, you are their safe place. You are there for them. You are on their team. So my best piece of advice, and my first, is to really look at the relationship you have with your child. And in the case of ADHD, often it is a little blemished. It is marred. When I first started working on my relationship with my son, when I really honestly looked at some of the things I had said to him, some of the ways we had disciplined him, there was a lot of shame and just cringiness there. There were a lot of moments where I had lost control, where I had acted childishly, where I would have wished I could have taken back the things I had said to him. Look at those things, really. Try to catalog them in your head and piece out why that moment was right or wrong. And often our reactions to our children with ADHD have been wrong, especially before we acknowledge that this is going on with them, that their brains are differently wired. Try to do better yourself before we build up our child, before we work on these little things to change their scheduling, their organization, their executive functioning skills, their impulse control, their talking back, all of these things that we want to change about them. Really reflect upon yourself and think about that connection with your child, because like I said, that is the foundation. The safer they feel, the more supported they feel, the easier it will be for them to rely and use the scaffolding you build around them. When you give them a visual cue chart and they already know that you have faith in them, that they can do this, that you are there to support them, that you're not there to chastise them. This isn't a tool so that you can see how many times you messed up, but rather a tool that we're going to try out because we want to see if this makes whatever task easier for you. We're in it together. You tell me, is this chart working for you? Is this timer working for you? If it's not, I'll pull back on that. Let me try a different thing. Let's look it up together. Let's figure out why our impulse control can be difficult. You know, it's the same thing for me. Sometimes that happens to me too. Talking about the challenges they face as a teammate is so helpful, not as a disciplinarian, not as someone who is cataloging and checking off all the times they messed up, but rather is cheering them on for everything that is working, for everything that we are succeeding in. That makes such a huge difference. So really look at how you've parented your child, how you address them, how you approach them in the morning. Are you already afraid something is going to go wrong? Or are you looking for what you can see that has gone right? This shift in your own mental mindset about how you approach your child is the most important thing. It is not the second most or the third or the fourth or a prong in this process. It is the most important thing. It is the foundation. And I really, really recommend that you look up things that will help you look at your child with more compassion and camaraderie than anything else. So that would involve sources for positive parenting. That would involve things about your own childhood. Look at yourself. Look at what your expectations are. I don't think we have to lower our expectation of our children with ADHD, but I do think we have to shift them. We have to broaden them and mold them to fit more in line with what is actually going on in our children's brains. What are they actually capable of, and how can we bolster their strengths and also shore up their weaknesses? So in conclusion, honestly, the most important thing that I will ever say in any of these videos is that whenever you are about to speak to your child about something you are disappointed in, something you are angered by, something you are proud of, something you are expectant of, something you are hopeful for, try to do it with your connection in mind. Will the words you say deepen that connection, strengthen that connection, or will it break it somehow? Will you diminish the trust your child has in you, or will you increase it? And if you can just ask yourself that simple question before any interaction with any of your children, honestly, you will have a better experience parenting, but also your child will have a better experience in being a child and will be more prone to listen to whatever comes out of your mouth next. Because when we are scared, when we are afraid, when we feel diminished, we have stopped listening. We are just trying to protect ourselves. If you want your child to be open to some of the suggestions you will be making to them as you continue with this video series, if you want your child to take the suggestions as helpful aids and not as disparaging crutches, things that make him or her more different than their siblings, speak to them, interact with them as a teammate, as someone who is there to support them and love them no matter what. This is not about checking off boxes. This is not about ascending a ladder of achievement. This is truly about making them feel safe and loved always, and especially at their worst moments. So that is my advice to you guys. Work on your connection before you open your mouth. Make sure that you are about to say something that deepens the connection, that allows them to feel safe, that throws them a lifeline. Nothing I will say in any of the videos to follow will be more important than that. As always, we are in it together. You are not alone. When you are the parent of a neuroatypical child or a differently wired child, it can feel very isolating and very lonely, but you are not alone. People do not talk about this stuff enough, and they should. We can do better. We are the superheroes of parents, and I truly believe that. Just the fact that you're watching this video shows how much care and concern you have for your child, how you truly recognize that they are differently wired and that something other than the normal parenting methods may be required. So that was my very best ADHD parenting advice, you guys. And I know some people might dismiss this as, oh, that was just saying to be a better parent, but it truly is not. Really look at yourself. Before you try to nitpick at your child and institute all these little systems and methods and scaffolds and medication and not medication and supplements and all of this stuff, really, really try to look at yourself and always ask the question, is what I am about to say or do going to strengthen my connection with my child or not? If you have other more specific questions or concerns that you'd like me to address as these videos roll out, please be sure to comment down below and I will try to address them in upcoming videos. I hope to make at least 2 to 3 ADHD videos a month, so be sure to hit the subscribe button down below. As always, I really appreciate your time. You are not alone in this. Do not feel alone. We are a community of parents who have atypically wired children, and we can help each other a lot if we are more open and honest about our experience. Thank you so much for your time, you guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.